Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Brighton podcast. It is your host, Jamie Guerra, and we preview this weekend's game with Blessings Chibamba. We're playing Tottenham this weekend. How are you feeling for it?
Well, I mean, tough result last week, but I think it's a new week. I'm back to being optimistic. I'm back to being the Danny Welbeck enjoyer that I was before our loss.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that you're optimistic. We'll go through this pod and maybe that optimism will hopefully get even bigger, or maybe it'll go the other way and completely diminish by the end of the pod. So, like I say, we are playing Tottenham on Super Sunday this Sunday, obviously, at 4:30 p.m. It's a game for the ages. Last time they came to the Amex, which is what's happening again, they lost 4-2 in an impressive performance by the Seagulls. Pedro scored 2 penalties. Jack Hinchwood, I'm pretty sure that was his first Premier League goal. And Estepinian got a 63rd minute winner, and they only scored in the 80th minute. So it was a pretty easy and comfortable result, bless. Do you think we'll kind of see the same this weekend?
Well, I mean, in terms of entertainment, I'm expecting it to be the same sort of spectacle. Whether or not it goes in our favour, it's a huge ask with obviously the players that we're missing, which I'm sure we'll talk about on this pod as well.
Yeah, the one thing I think it will be is goals galore once again. I think there is so many opportunities for goals, and I hate to say it, but I think the goals could be coming from their end. Because if you just look at the underlying stats of the game, expected goals, Tottenham are first in the league. Shots on target per match, Tottenham are first. Big chances created, Tottenham are first. Surprise, surprise. There is a glimmer of hope, though, because for big chances missed, it must be that Timo Werner or Richarlison, because they are top of that as well. So they create a lot, they miss a lot. How do you kind of see the game going?
Again, I think that with the players that we've got missing, they are going to get a lot of chances, and it's whether or not they can put them in the back of the net. I mean, if Verbruggen's just having one of those mad days, the fans might, be encouraged by that and sort of lift the team up, and we can maybe hurt them the other way in the other end.
Yeah, the interesting stat that I as well think is both teams, us and them, are in the top 2 of possession. So they're first and we're second. And we both keep over 62% of the ball on average in our games. I'm kind of struggling to see who's going to win that kind of battle, or like the possession game in the middle of the park, because Tottenham don't strike me as a team, or at least last season, that would have kept a lot of possession. I always thought of them as a team that would play kind of on the counter with a lot of their players running in behind, and the through balls that we suffered at the hands of Chelsea with last week. That's kind of how I envisage Tottenham playing. So now it feels like they're a big possession team, and we know Ange likes his high line. So does Hertzler. So it's going to be both teams just playing with a high line on the middle of the centre circle line. The halfway line is just both lines of defence.
Yeah, that halfway line, that bit is just going to be so boggy because that's exactly where it's going to be played.
I
agree with you though.
One thing I was going to say is I can just imagine, I hope they've been practicing their rondos, because the spaces in the middle of the park where both teams like to press high as well, that's going to be very tight for both teams. So that's going to be key, in my opinion, is who keeps the ball better in terms of who doesn't do the loose touches that we saw against Chelsea, or who actually makes the passes.
Yeah, and that's the point I was sort of alluding to. I think both sides actually play it a little bit similar in terms of, like, they pack the midfield with essentially like very attacking players. For example, when João Pedro was available, he would drop into midfield. Um, and when they both attack, they commit a lot of players forward. A lot of players forward. If you watch Tottenham, what their fullbacks are doing, they're sometimes caught in no man's land, and the break is actually always on. So yeah, like you say, it's just going to depend who can keep it tight, who can keep the ball um, neatly to create these chances. If Brighton can do that and actually have more of the ball, it might sort of stop the amount of chances Tottenham are going to create. But it'd be interesting to see what Hertzler goes with, especially with what happened in the weekend, because that was an absolute nightmare for him to
Yeah.
sort of do that again. I think it's going to be so it'd be quite worrying to see Brighton lose 3 or 4-0 just because of a
Yeah.
high line again.
Yeah. And the thing that you mentioned right at the start of that is the fact that they like to throw attacking players in in their lineup. Kulusevski was like their cam, and then Maddison, like against Man United, their last game where they absolutely ran rampant at Man United. They had Bentancur as their like holding midfielder, as it were, and then they had Madison and Kulusevski both playing as like in those central areas, and then they had Brennan Johnson and Werner out wide, and that just kind of signifies their kind of philosophy in terms of pressing high, winning the ball up the pitch. They don't want to be doing much defending like on the last ditch, and then if they do, the thing where they do, the thing that they have that we don't is the speedy centre backs to get them out of those. If a ball goes over the top, then Mickey van der Ven, I was about to say Van der Beek. Mickey van der Ven can then sweep up, or Romero, who is actually also pretty quick, he can sweep up. Whereas we've got Webster and Dunk, and like you say, if it does turn into that kind of game again, I can see it being an absolute nightmare for us because we don't have the pace to deal with a Werner, although he's not great. Brennan Johnson, rapid and actually good. And Son, if he is actually back, then we're not going to have the capability, in my opinion, to deal with that.
Yeah, and I'll just go back to a point as well. We were saying what Hertz is how he's going to approach this, and I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw a back three. That might be a step backwards for him in his ideas and philosophy and what he wants to do. But in terms of just personnel that's available, like we don't want to try and go toe to toe with this Tottenham team. I think they will rip us to shreds if we try and press too high. And then get caught again because they commit a lot of bodies forwards. And the difference is that when they are controlling the ball with the Bentancur or the two centre backs, they keep possession quite well and they rotate it quite well and they get it to Maddison, who's their danger man and can create from there. So I think for me, it's a tough one to say because I really like the system that he's trying to do, but I want to see a back three. I want to see it keep it tight.
Yeah, and we'll go into that after this ad break, but in terms of how they can hurt us potentially and what are the players that we're most worried about seeing us come up against. So we'll hear this ad from Zencastr and then we'll be back. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K audio recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencastr makes it easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. And we are back with a Daily Brighton podcast, and we're looking in this segment at how Tottenham can hurt us and the things to kind of watch out for, the lessons we kind of learnt from previous weeks. And when we speak about this, Bless, is I see Tottenham being we saw how we got dismantled by Chelsea last week. It was the pace in behind of Jackson, of Madueke, of Jadon Sancho, even, who I don't think is particularly quick, or he didn't show those flashes at Man United anyway. But he even had got the better of the back line a couple of times. And I see this team, this Tottenham team, being that, but a little bit better, or if not better, a lot quicker. Werner, synonymous with his pace. You've got Brennan Johnson, as I mentioned, rapid as well. Probably the same level as Madueke, who Estepinian had a nightmare with and brought down a couple of times last week. And then they've got the pace of Son, if he is fit and does actually play on the weekend. Of him in behind, 32 or 31 years old or whatever he is, but still got electric pace. And then Solanke's no slouch either. That's the fear I have as well. And we saw how Cole Palmer ripped us apart. I think Maddison is equally as capable if you're just asking him to put a ball in a space. Like, I don't think he's anywhere, like, I don't think he's the player that Cole Palmer is. But if you're asking him just to put a ball in behind or an easy ball into space, then I think he's going to capitalise.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I think with just how they play with Madison and Kulusevski, they are such attacking eights. Like Kulusevski's, predominantly a right winger, and just his ball carrying and pace to run beyond Solanke, as well as everything that's going on. It could be a really tough one. And you mentioned Maddison as well. I think he's brilliant. I think he's definitely got an eye for a pass. And if he can see space and there's an area to put a ball in, it'll be a very tough day. What I find interesting is what they do with their fullbacks. How do you think that could harm us? Or do you reckon that could play in our favour because of wingers?
Yeah, in terms of, I think I saw a couple of times with Pedro Porro sometimes going in midfield, and Destiny Ogdogi against Man United, which I watched on Super Sunday last week. Like, he was also drifting in. They both can do, I think both fullbacks are very talented. They can both do either way they want to play. Like, they can both be the traditional fullback where they overlap, but they can also be technically decent enough, especially Porro, to drift inside and be that third midfielder to help Bentancur. But I think, like you say, that is potentially where Minter which I would like to see actually Minter start this game, because I think that pace in behind is good to deal with, especially if you're giving him space, would be able to capitalise on the spaces that they're leaving. And it's someone to kind of compete with Mickey van der Ven, because he is absolutely rapid. He's a cyborg, that guy. So I think I would like to see Minter and Matoma kind of make the most, if their fullbacks do drift in, make the most of that space inside or down the lines. And then actually take on Romero or Van der Ven, who I think they're actually Tottenham are pretty comfortable leaving them to defend because they believe in them. They're both pretty decent centre-backs. But I think with the shiftiness and the speed and the nimbleness of our two wingers, I think that's where we could capitalise.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that as well. And I'm sure we'll unpack more of that in the next segment as well. But I was just thinking as well, another player we've got to be wary of, obviously, is Dominic Solanke, who's just is his first or second now?
Yeah, his second goal, yeah.
And I think he'll probably look at this game and really fancy it now, like just to get some rhythm. So yeah, it'll be important to see how Duncan Webster can handle him. Again, very, very quick, very much more direct than Jackson, I think, and definitely a better finisher than Jackson. So we can't give him too many chances or too much space.
Yeah. And the thing that Jackson was doing last week was bending his runs, and I think in the second half in particularly, he was looking at the high line and just sitting, knowing he has the beating of Lewis Dunk for pace. He was just sitting off, making sure he wasn't offside, because we caught them out a couple times in the first half, but he was just making sure I'm not offside. I'm just going to blitz this guy for pace. And like you say, Dominic Solanke is probably just as quick. I've never seen them do a 40-yard dash together or a 100-meter sprint, but he comes across just as quick. So I think a through ball, and I would probably fancy Dominic Solanke over Lewis Dunk. And then Dominic Solanke's got more finesse as well, whereas Jackson was a bit more, let's smash it at goal. I think Solanke could probably sit someone down and then go for the finish, or do some sort of trickery to, maybe not trickery like he's Ronaldinho, but do something to get a shot on goal that would actually be dangerous. Are there any other people that you think might be dangerous or that we should probably watch out for or man mark?
Just a bit of a side note, but one thing I don't want to see is that Van der Ven run happening. I want Belieber to be stopping that.
Oh, mate, if I see Van der Ven sprinting at Lewis Dunk, I'm thinking game over. I'm thinking this is actually going to be another assist for this guy. But yeah, if that does start breaking, I want him taken out by Belieber. Not injured, just like a tactical foul, obviously. But yeah, and then we've covered it slightly now, but we'll cover it into more section of what you think or how you think, Bless, we can hurt them after this ad from the Global Sports Podcast Network. And we are back with a daily Brighton podcast. And Bless, I went prematurely of how we can hurt them, and you baited me in to talk about how I want to see our speedy wingers dominate the spaces that they're going to leave. Now, why don't you tell me how you think we're going to beat them and what you think should happen?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about their midfield, and obviously with Maddison and Kulusevski, they're very attacking. And I think if we can get a really nice balance in midfield of a player who's creative, with maybe Enciso, a player who is powerful and combative in Belieber, I think we can really get a Bentancur, because although Bentancur is obviously very outstanding on the ball, he's not your typical like break and play down kind of midfielder. So I'd like to see someone get at him a little bit, because in those transitions he will be left isolated. It would just be him in front of the two centre backs. So get someone running at him, get him on the yellow card nice and early. Once he's in the yellow card, he's not going to tackle for the rest of the game. Yeah. And he's that holding midfielder. So I think that could be a route forwards. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I actually like that idea, because that's something Man United did not do at all. They played like basically the other side. They played with Ugarte and Kobe Mainu in there, and they didn't come close to even testing Bentancur. You don't know how well. They certainly didn't test how good he was at defending, or especially when he was playing as that single lone pivot as it is. So that is something I actually fully back, in terms of if you were to play Enciso there, he has got the trickery and the close control to kind of make it hard work for Bentancur. Whereas if he does throw in a tackle and commits a foul, then he could potentially be on a yellow card early, just by the way Enciso is. So what would you suggest in terms of, so last game we played Hinchelwood, Belieber and Whiffer centre mids. Do you see us running with that again, or do you want to see something else?
Yeah, I think I know I talked about a back three, but I'm gonna, just for the purpose of winning, I'm gonna stick to what we normally do. I think it would be good to see Enciso instead of Hinchelwood. I just think if you have a player in midfield in an attacking position who can beat a man, especially when you're playing against an opposition who commits so many forwards. Let's just say we're in the scenario and Enciso picks the ball up and then he beats Bentancur, gets past Bentancur. That's only two players left until you get to Vicario in goal. So it's like you need just a little bit of magic, a little bit of skill to get past someone, and then that could alleviate the pressure going backwards, as well as also creating chances going forwards as well. So I think I'd like to see him. We haven't seen him too much. I think it could work.
Yeah, I'm also thinking actually, I'll put this to you. Do you see Ruta starting again? So would you see this is what I'm thinking. Would you see Belieber as kind of the last man as our soul? Would you still want to see Matt Swiffer even after last week's performance where he did get caught out by the high press a couple of times. He didn't have the best game. He did do a couple of stray passes. Would you see him back into the lineup, or would you want to just go all out attack and go Belieber as that sole guy, and then Enciso, and then maybe Ruta again, and then still wingers, or is that way too attacking?
I mean, that's the sort of thing they do, but I'd say that's a bit too attacking. And yeah, on your point as well, I think realistically, I think he'll probably go with Ruta doing that job I was saying Enciso would do, and then go with natural wingers on the flanks. But in terms of Matt Swiffer, I think he just needs games. So I think just stick him in. If he's fit and he's ready to go, stick him in and he will start picking it up. Again, there's going to be Madison and Kulusevski. There's going to be plenty of players to pick up for him. So Belieber will need a hand in there, I think.
The other way I was actually thinking we could beat them is by breaking. They're a team that like to press high, and they don't. That's why they have the high line as well. Is they press you very high up the pitch with the basically as you come out your box. If we kind of bait the press, manage to beat the press, and then we are kind of through onto basically their back line. That is kind of a way I could see us having some joy. Is if we are even if it's through a Belieber run through the middle, just a bulldozing run. I call the guy the bulldozer for a reason. Just no one can take him off the ball once he's at speed with it. If it just takes that, then I can see that. And then if he's running at defence and Minter and Mitoma are on the wings, sprinting down, and just a ball played through, that's where I hope to see some joy. That's kind of what I was also picturing in my head last night.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm gonna build on that and give you something. And if this comes through on Sunday, I don't care if I'm scheduled to be on that Tuesday pod. I will be on that pod if this comes true. But what I can see already is something De Zerbi used to do quite a long, when he was around, where the strikers would drop a bit deeper, and then the wingers will make those sort of out to in runs inwards. I think we could hurt them there as well. Just building on your point, so bait the press, get them nice and high, and then if you can beat that, that will be the ball straight down the middle or straight down the sort of half spaces to get through. And if that happens, Jamie, you will see me again on Tuesday buzzing.
To be fair, we've got the personnel to actually do that because we've said it so many times, but Welbeck, the type of player he is in his mature version, in the 30-plus-year-old version of Welbeck, is this guy that likes to be a bit of a false nine or playmaker type, where he does drop deep and does look for link-up play. So that is, 100% back that. What's your score predictions then? 6-6.
Took out more. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 2-2.
2-2.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna be.
You're not gonna be a villain, are you?
I am gonna be the villain. I am gonna be the villain. Just because of what happened last week, and I think my fear is Hertzler won't have listened to this podcast. He won't change what he's going to do. He won't be able to adapt. And it's going to be a literal carbon copy of how we got caught out last week. Van Hecker's already been ruled out for a month. So we're going to have Webster, whether we like it or not, Brighton fans. We're going to have Lewis Dunk. Not ideal again. Maybe Veltman's back. And if so, that's still not much pace against Timo Werner, who lives offside anyway, to be fair, so we might not have to worry about him. But I could see it being 4-1. So bad.
Mate,
so bad.
Oh, come on.
I'm going to be nice. I'm going to say 3-1. Which still doesn't feel very nice, but I'm not looking forward to see if it is a carbon copy of last week. You will see me on the Match Reaction pod doing a rant again, even though I'm in Prague. I'm going to watch it in Prague. I'm going to come on the pod especially for it, and I'm going to be ranting about Herzl not refusing to change this back line with Adam Webster and Lewis Dunk. Hopefully he learns. We will wait and see. But yeah, I'm going to go 3-1 to be nice. Tell us what you guys think at home of what the score you think, whether I'm wrong, whether you fully back Herzler and his philosophy, whether you're like Bless and you're hoping for a draw. But yeah, that's been everything from us at the Daily Brighton podcast. Bless, any final words?
Danny Welbeck, free kick.
Enough said.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.